Hello, welcome back to TSC Talks, the podcast inspired by the condition known as tuberous sclerosis complex. My name is Jill Woodworth and I am your host. Thanks so much for tuning in. Before I pitch you on the next guest, Daniella Benea, I do want to share a little bit of information about our Indiegogo crowdfunder that we just launched. Before I give you the nitty gritty, I just want to share my personal motivations. I don't know about you all, but if you are a caregiver or you are an individual that has tuberous sclerosis complex or another chronic condition that can be life-threatening, you're probably on a whole lot of medications, dependent on a pharmacist, a doctor, and all kinds of medical professionals for your care. I can share with you assuredly that medication management has been one of the most challenging aspects of case managing individuals with tuberous sclerosis complex, often one of the most frustrating. And I'm not going to go into great detail on that because I know a lot of my listeners can relate, but I will share personally, I am frustrated with not getting answers on the impact of polypharmacy, being on these medications for affecting different organs of the body for, an unknown time period. I just want someone to sit me down and talk to me and tell me how this is going to look in 20 years when they've been on these medications for all this time. Dealing with side effects becomes as much of a challenge as often as the condition that you're treating it for. And I am not encouraging going off your meds. I am just here to ask the questions. And the questions that I'm asking drove me to start this crowdfunder. Not by myself. I have a team of 300 other individuals. Lisa Larson, of course, my co-owner and business partner at TSC Talks, and Chris Nichols, who is the President and Chief Operating Officer of Nikki's Gardens of Hope, and Amora Correa, who is an editor on our newsletter, as well as working on the grants at Nikki's Gardens of Hope, has offered to work on this podcast. And I work on the podcast and the crowdfunder, and we are going to test different products, different CBD products, and we are going to produce a guidebook, a family cannabis guidebook for anyone that contributes $20 or more to our Indiegogo campaign. I feel like we're going to be gathering, I don't feel like it, I know we are going to be gathering a lot of resources. As you know, we're not doctors. We are going to get in touch with the leaders in the industry from all different sides, medical professionals, pharmacists, who's my next guest, by the way, and growers, the people that do the testing, and we're going to collect all this information and we're going to use it to inform the decisions we make about product testing, which products to test. We're going to do some basic testing on labels and making sure you're getting the product that is advertised, that is on the label inside the actual product. And CBD is the latest craze, so we also address that and the often overwhelming, confusing information about marijuana, cannabis, however you want to call it, that's out there. We're going to sort through that in the podcast and work it into our guidebook as well, giving you leading information from people that are highly concerned about the long-term use of multiple medications, looking at alternate sources that have a lot of potential, that have been around for a lot of years, but there's so much confusion over how to use. So that's the motivation behind the crowdfunder, testing these products. We're looking to you all for your own experiences. You can share this crowdfunder. You can talk to me on the podcast. You can tell me about the products that you use that have been helpful or your negative experiences. Both myself and my daughter had a negative experience with interaction between CBD on her part and medical cannabis on mine that were scary and led me to really research pharmaceutical interactions. So I believe this will be a project of value. I am quite confident. Fascinating as well. So I hope you join me in following us and getting involved. I will be updating and supplying you with plenty of information on all the social media outlets for TSC Talks. So that's what's going on the podcast. However, we are continuing our regular content along the same lines on tuberous sclerosis complex and other related conditions, having guests on as always. So without further ado, my next guest, Daniella Benea. She's a pharmacist who works in the medical marijuana industry in Connecticut at a medical marijuana dispensary there, as well as in Worcester at the Botanist, which is a medical marijuana dispensary in Worcester. She gives us a wealth of information about her motivations for getting involved in this large and expanding field, her hopes, her challenges, the one-on-one patient interaction that she gets in the medical marijuana setting as opposed to the traditional pharmaceutical pharmacist role. Also talking about the types of issues that she's consulted on, the medications people are using, various dangerous medications or ones that might be concerning, and also emphasizing to, the fact that there's a lot of workarounds and working with your doctor and with a pharmacist. There's a way to do this, and it is amazing. And she's seen a lot of really positive improvements in conditions that might not have been as positively impacted by other medications and are less likely to cause a load of side effects. So without further ado, I'm going to say thanks for listening to me. Thanks for being involved and following TSC Talks. As a parent of individuals affected and taking all these medications, my heart is in this. It's always been one of the heaviest and most challenging aspects and concerning aspects for a lifetime of my loved ones affected by TSC. I don't know what will happen when I'm gone, but I can't believe that taking all these medicines for all this time is great and will improve their quality of life. So maybe it is life-saving, but I think that we can relook at this as well and ask these questions. Anyways, thanks, Daniella, for being on the podcast. I hope you enjoy this. Check out our Indiegogo and take it away.
So why don't you give me a little bit of information about yourself and your background?
Okay. So I graduated UConn Pharmacy School in 2014. With my doctor of pharmacy. And at the time, 5 years ago, and at the time, medical marijuana in my state, in Connecticut, was just being approved as far as the legislation and whatnot. And at the time, a lot of people in the medical community didn't really know what to think about it. We didn't know what they were going to do with it, how they were going to run the program. And so at the time, I never thought I would work in medical cannabis. I graduated and I started working at Stop and Shop Pharmacy, where I'm actually still per diem at times. So retail pharmacy, and I was very happy with that. And it was what I was doing since I was 16 as a technician.
Really?
So that was my background.
Oh, cool.
About 2 years into working, I started feeling like I wanted to maybe explore some other options in pharmacy, because as much as I loved what I did, I didn't feel that I had as much patient contact as I would like, which, you would think would be, you have you're standing there the whole day talking to patients, but, sometimes as being the pharmacist, you're in the back, you're doing a lot, there's a lot of other
kind
things
of behind the scenes almost, like when I go to pharmacy, it's the cashiers and then for the techs, and then, sometimes I wave to the pharmacist.
Yeah, exactly. And so I started feeling like, I really want to be more patient-centered. So I started looking around, and I had a technician of mine who had left us a little bit before that to go work at Prime Wellness of Connecticut, which is the medical marijuana dispensary in South Windsor. And he said, Danny, I've been talking about you to some of my managers. They might be hiring a new pharmacist soon. Why don't you send me your resume? I think that you'd be a good fit here. So I did, and that's first I really thought about it. So I started doing some research into it, and by that time, the program was up and running for a couple years. So I put my resume, I went for an interview, and they decided to take me on. And what I really loved about it was how patient-centered it was, because most of our day is meeting with patients, talking with patients, whether it be consults or on the phone or through email, having them come in, ask questions. So we still do regular day-to-day day-to-day activities as far as filling, the prescriptions and whatnot. But we do get that really, really patient-centered one-on-one time.
That's pretty cool.
Now I've been there for about 3 years. And in that time, I always maintained my dual licensure. So from the minute I graduated pharmacy school, I was licensed in Massachusetts and Connecticut. And my company was bought by a bigger company that has dispensaries in different states. And so when the Botanist opened in Massachusetts, that is our sister company. And being licensed in Mass, they decided to maybe see, how I could be helpful up there. The difference between Massachusetts and Connecticut is that pharmacists aren't technically part of the regulations in Massachusetts like they are in Connecticut. So the way our program works in Connecticut is, we have to have pharmacists that work at the dispensary because our state classified it as a controlled substance category 2, which means it has to be dispensed by a pharmacist. So that's sort of where that came from. But just the fact that we have pharmacists really made it was a great tool because patients do have questions. They have questions about medication interactions and a lot of times, the doctors will then ask us and just having us accessible to the patients right away was very beneficial. So my company thought, well, it works in Connecticut. Why don't we offer that service in Massachusetts and see how it goes and see how it's received. And I started doing a couple events there, really trying to get the patient feedback on it. And everyone was very excited and they were very intrigued.
What did you do at the event? What was that?
One of the first ones I did was for the grand opening of the Botanist, actually. They had me there, and I was standing there. We had a terpene bar, so we were teaching people about terpenes as they were coming in. And then I was just asking patients, how would you feel about having a pharmacist here and being able to get some of your questions answered? And a lot of people were a lot of positive feedback. So over time, I've been going there more and more, and now I'm there consistently every Thursday in-house. And then besides that, I do outreach events with our outreach coordinator, Ross. And, when there's like a CannaCon or an expo, I'll be at the table with him and I can talk to patients there and then just spread information. And then we also do presentations. So we did a senior center presentation in Sterling a couple weeks ago where it's like an information session. Yeah. So we do that and the feedback from those is quite amazing. The first one we went to, we didn't know how popular it was going to be. We thought it might be 10 to 15 people, more of a round table discussion. And I show up and there's 60 people sitting there waiting for us to present. Yes. So that was definitely interesting. It's given me an opportunity to work on some public speaking skill sets. That's always been something I've always been a little nervous about. So it's definitely, giving me an opportunity to do that. And it's been very exciting. And so that's how I ended up up in Massachusetts helping at the Botanist. And, it's just been growing since. We have a lot of presentations we want to do and opportunities like this. People want to know information and that's why we're there. We're there to give it out and help people find the right information and see how it might be fitting for them or certain disease states with certain medications. And what I've seen, it's definitely been helpful for a plethora of conditions.
Yeah.
It's amazing to see some of the positive changes that I've seen in some of my patients that I work closely with.
So you can see the change. That's got to be rewarding, especially. I guess I didn't think about the fact that, in a regular pharmacy, you're like 2 steps removed and you're really getting some like personal individualized interaction, which I think, in my opinion, is what's needed overall, but particularly with something like cannabis because there's just so many variables that people don't understand and so much we still don't know. So
that's what also makes it challenging.
Yeah.
It's not like regular medicine in practices that have already been established as a standard of care don't include cannabis because there's not a lot of research. It's been federally illegal for a while.
Yeah.
So not having those evidence-based facts does make it very challenging. I think it's also exciting because we really are on the forefront of maybe setting those standards of care, but there is a lot of variables, and that's definitely why at least having, health professionals to be able to help patients navigate those variables, how it could be useful for them as an individual or even how to use it. There's 4 or 5 different ways to use it, and it might not always be appropriate for every patient. And so being able to help them, one of my most rewarding instances too. So in Connecticut, we do help pediatric patients too with seizures and
they have a seizure protocol. That's
and so it's interesting because every child is different too. So there are things that
we're all just so different, and we've extrapolated these treatments that I really think need overall individualized. That's kind of my soapbox.
And things come up too, factors that you don't know. I mean, I had one patient who we mostly use CBD, and for some reason this patient CBD exacerbated the seizures. And so
that happened to my daughter.
Yep. And so we actually switched to THCA, and that helped her. It's just very interesting. And some conditions we can help track symptoms, so like seizures, so we can monitor how many seizures are they having, are they going down, what's going on. Some conditions are a little bit more challenging with measuring symptoms. Pain is something that is not technically a measure that you can use. It's very subjective as well. PTSD symptoms, there's a lot of different things. And so being able to just observe and collect data and just really try to use the patterns that I've seen to try to help other people is really kind of where we're at right now. I'm hoping that in time things can be more established. It's difficult though, because it is a plant, so things are not across the board. Every batch might be slightly different. There's a lot of things that go into it, and I think it gets such a bad rap, but I think it's just really misunderstood, and I think it's scary this is what I think, and you can jump in and correct me, but like for doctors, it's got to be scary because there's really there's not a lot of absolutes. So you're kind of flying blind, like you were saying, there's no protocol for you as pharmacists necessarily to standards of care or anything. So you're kind of really are like right on trailblazing with this, what you're doing, I think. I love it. I love hearing about this. It makes me happy because I've found a lot of relief with cannabis, but I've also had some really challenging situations that I wish I had understood how it could interact with other medications. And that happened with my daughter, and she's, how it interacts with seizure medications in particular. And so, I love it, Daniella. So I just think that's great. Now, you probably already answered this, but the training that when you jumped from like Stop and Shop into Prime Wellness, what kind of training or how did you prepare for that? What did you have to learn? Was reading, lots of reading. There's this great book, I don't know if you've come across it yet, called Cannabis Pharmacy by Michael Backus.
I've heard of it. I probably skimmed it. Cannabis Pharmacy.
Great book. So we do a lot of reading. So when they signed me on, it took a while because, once you become an employee there too, with the state, it takes a while to get your, application and whatnot, and your approval. So in that meantime, before I even started, it was, my new pharmacy manager sending me articles, sending me reading material, because even now, I don't use cannabis actually myself. So there are things I had to learn, like even just how to use certain devices. I didn't know. It's just not something that I've ever really come across. So it's just lots of reading. And we're constantly learning too. So we're constantly looking for new articles coming out, learning just from the patients that we help on a daily basis. So unfortunately, there really is no
formal training.
Formal training. And then, in pharmacy school, they touch upon it slightly in different classes, but more of an illicit substance. So, as pharmacists, we learn about pharmaceuticals, but we also learn about how other chemicals affect the body. And so you do get it in certain classes, but it's not something as really diving into it as a medicine, how it affects the body with other medications. It's more of a kind of glossing over it.
I see.
So as far as formal training in school, you don't really get any. And then really is when you're out and in all the things that we do. PubMed is something that we're always constantly on, trying to solve problems, look up things. And we have patient questions that sometimes come out of left field. And so how are we going to attack this question? How are we going to find the answers? A lot of researching, a lot of reading.
Well, I interviewed a guy who's kind of, he's a very advocate, cannabis advocate, and Mike Robinson, and he's in California, and is just passionate about getting doctors on board as far as trying to understand and not being, because so many people are taking or using this and so many people are on pharmaceuticals And if you're treating somebody as a doctor, you know, it really behooves you to not turn away from this substance that they're probably in some way using as a harm reduction part, or recreationally. It's just, the disconnect, really addressing that. So do you guys have, as far as what's the role with any doctors, is there any connected with Prime Wellness or the botanist? Are there friendly ones that you refer to, or?
Yeah, so legally speaking to the regulations, I can't refer anyone to one specific doctor.
Gotcha.
So I can refer them to 3 or 4. I could say, in your area, these are some doctors who certify, but we can't, and the same thing with doctors. So doctors can't tell patients, well, you should go to this dispensary or that dispensary.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some kind of rules there.
I see.
Yeah, but we do work with doctors. So let's say I had a patient who came into Prime Wellness with a botanist and their doctor had a concern. Under HIPAA, we can work with that doctor. I mean, if they can contact me and contact them with the patient's approval if there was a specific question the doctor had a concern about. So we do work with them.
That's good. That's good to know. That's a step. Okay. What are the most common concerns, or, that people kind of give me an overview of like what you see?
Well, I'd probably say top 3 would be some sort of chronic pain, PTSD, and either some sort of oncology-related matter, something along those lines. Those are probably my top 3 common that I see on a daily basis. But we do have a lot of conditions approved in Connecticut, and Massachusetts, they do have that one category, any debilitating condition that a physician sees fit. And I think that that's nice because it does open the doors to people who might not necessarily fit into any one very specific disease state by diagnosis.
Right.
So I do see a lot of different conditions. I've even seen some rare conditions.
Okay.
But I'd say mostly everyone. Those are the top 3.
The main ones, yeah. Then as far as so they can disclose to you the meds they're on, and you can kind of talk to them about what might be a concern. Is that kind of basically how it goes?
Yeah, so everyone, it's up to patient discretion. In Connecticut, one of the regulations, they have to see a pharmacist the first time they come in, and we do ask them for their medication list. Not everyone gives it to us. They don't have to disclose it, but we ask for it because we have actually had some instances where it was good because people did have medication interactions, and we were able to tell them ahead of time. In Massachusetts, what I do is the fact that I'm there for consults. Most of the time, people do bring their medication list in because that is why they want to talk to me. They want it. Yeah. So most of the time, patients are pretty forthcoming with it because they do want to know. A lot of patients are nervous or they have some sort of hesitancy coming in. And a lot of them, after they talk to us, it's, wow, you made me feel a lot more comfortable about it, And so that's really rewarding to hear. But yeah, most of the time they bring in their whole list. We go through it.
Okay. That's kind of what I was envisioning. Yeah. And then are there any particular meds that are more concerning or?
For sure. So there have been 2 medications that we've come across that had, by interaction standards, we would say are contraindicated. One of them is Rapamune, which is used in kidney transplant.
My kids take that.
Yeah, Rapamune and Ranexa. Ranexa is a heart medication.
Okay.
So in those instances, we tell the patient this really is contraindicated. We really should speak with either a kidney transplant team, see what they feel about it, or in the case of Ranexa, the cardiologist. I've had instances with Ranexa that the cardiologist was open to the patient using cannabis, so he just changed the medication. He changed them to something else.
Nice.
I've had instances where the cardiologist didn't want to change the medication, but he said, well, I would monitor them. And that's fine too. So as long as we have that communication, there's a lot of medications that aren't technically contraindicated, but there's definitely warnings. So I know, one of the biggest medications a lot of my geriatric patients are on and ask about is warfarin, blood thinning. Lots of patients are on that, and warfarin can interact with so many things, even the food we eat. So, of course, interacts with cannabis as well. So, monitoring. Monitoring is really the big factor that I try to drive home because it's not contraindicated. It's just we need to monitor. So we need to just make sure the doctor's going to check your INR level and make sure your warfarin's staying within range.
Okay.
there's a lot of medications out there that can add to drowsiness. Benzodiazepines, which a lot of my PTSD patients are on for anxiety, that can interrupt with cannabis. It can make you drowsy, lethargic. So we want to just caution patients on that. There's a lot of medications even to do with heart rate. Metoprolol is one of the ones I like to use as an example because it's an interesting fact that metoprolol works by lowering the patient's heart rate. Well, cannabis can increase heart rate. Ooh. So it might, in the body, technically work against it, but on an interaction level in the liver, cannabis can actually increase the amount of metoprolol in your body. So that means it might work better. So what do we do? What do we tell people, right? So you have these two different types of interactions, and each person it might be different. So the take-home message is monitor your blood pressure, monitor how you feel when you're getting up from laying down to standing. Make sure you don't feel dizzy or lightheaded. If you do notice a drop in blood pressure or an increase in blood pressure, call your doctor. Let's see what we can do. A lot of things can be fixed by either just monitoring, adjusting other medications, and that just has to do with communication. So communicating with patients, communicating with other doctors, and having them be comfortable enough to ask us those questions or come to us if they feel like something's off, or we can kind of walk you through it and kind of decide what to do next.
Yeah, that's really great. Just taking away a lot of the fear and anxiety that people have and making it, because it does have such potential and, you're seeing results and people are going to use it. So making it win-win, I guess. Yeah. So as far as consistency and quality related to med dosing, do you have any comments on that? I know you mentioned not all batches are the same. Is there any, I know we have the vaping issue here in Massachusetts where it's banned. Yeah. Do you have any comments on that? I mean, is there anything that people can do to try other than monitor? I guess it kind of ties into monitoring.
Yeah. So one of the most consistent ways, so in Connecticut, because our program now has been around for so long, we have pretty consistent product.
And you have a testing lab.
We have testing, yeah. So the testing lab. And so we know exactly, let's say, how many milligrams are in a tincture. So a tincture can vary. So let's say last batch, it was 28 milligrams a milliliter. This batch might be 30. Okay, that's not too off.
Okay.
But just helping patients adjust that dose potentially. In Massachusetts specifically, the vaping issue, I was very surprised when that happened. Yeah. And it is very upsetting as well. A lot of patients use vaping as a way to get away from the harshness of smoke, but still have that very quick relief that inhalation can give. And now that they are banned for the moment, I feel like there's going to be a flood of patients either uncomfortable with using smoke as an option, but then also now trying to navigate, well, maybe I should switch to tinctures. What else should I use in the meantime? Yeah. And
what would you recommend?
If vaping is your primary choice, and that's what has been working, you're comfortable with, tinctures under the tongue can be a close second as far as how quickly they work. They could work within 20 to 25 minutes if you hold it under your tongue and it gets absorbed there. It's just, I know some people just have an aversion to smoking. So I'd hate to say, because smoking would technically be probably the closest thing, effect-wise. But every person's going to be different with that. It's going to be tough because vaping was such a big product. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm hoping that they will at least possibly reverse it when it comes to medical. None of the issues with vaping have been associated with medical dispensary grade and tested vapes. I'm hoping that maybe they'll reverse that, because my fear is you have patients who've been using this as a medicine, and if they can't get it from their actual dispensary where they have been, I feel like the problem might get worse.
Right, and forces people to go illegal.
And exactly, which is where the problems have been happening. So I really hope that doesn't happen. It's going to be a tough situation, honestly. And I'm happy, though, that I am at least at the botanist for that, because I know I'm going to have lots of patients coming in for questions and asking as far as dosing, where to start now. Let's say they do want to switch to tinctures. We have a great line that we carry at botanist called Howell's Tincture. I don't know if you've heard of that brand.
No, tell me.
Howell's Tincture is great. Everything is all dosed. So, the milligrams, so it can help people. The droppers on the inside are marked, so you can start, with 0.25 milliliters and whatnot. One point I like to make is that inhalation tolerance isn't necessarily the same as sublingual or edible tolerance.
Okay.
So you can have someone who's smoked every day for 50 years, and the first time they go to try an edible, you want to start the smallest dose because it's going to be a different absorption. Yes. So with tinctures are the same thing.
Okay.
So I like to say, okay, we're going to start low and, we titrate slowly because there's a sweet spot at some point. So as you go up, you might find a spot where it's working, and anything more than that might not necessarily give more benefit. So you want to try to use the least effective dose.
Yes.
And that's why I'm a really big fan of starting low, going slow, and finding that sweet spot for every person, which is going to be across the board. It's going to be all over the place for each person. I have
that's a really good point.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be a frustrating point for a lot of patients because
and for pharmacists too. I mean, that takes a lot of patience and tenacity and time.
And patience. And a lot of times when patients are in pain and they say, well, 10 milligrams works for my friend, so why isn't it working for me? I said, but everyone's different. We have to try to find. It's very individualized. Yeah, so I just tell people try not to get frustrated, try not to get discouraged. I think that's what stops a lot of people before they can find the relief. And there's a lot of different products out there. That
was my next question. As far as like strains and products, do you, when you're working with a patient, do you make recommendations kind of based on what's available at the pharmacy, or how familiar do you have to be with the different strains? And do you, I guess again, it's going to be individual, but just to give people listening a sense of, like, I know sativa is more the smile and indica is relaxing, I guess. So is that accurate?
It is accurate for the most part. I think over time as cannabis has grown and there's a lot of breeding and crossbreeding.
Yep.
I don't know if everything necessarily fits into those categories like boxes as much as we would like them to. So what we really look at is we look at the testing of the flowers or the vape oils and we see, okay, what does this contain? So I'll look at the cannabinoid content. I'll look at the terpene profile. So terpenes can really give a product that uplifting or that more sedating feeling based on what it contains. So, for example, an example I like to use is a terpene called myrcene. It's something that's very sedating and very body heavy. So let's say you had a sativa that did have a lot of myrcene in it. Well, it might be a little uplifting, but it might also have a couch lock effect to it. It might be kind of really relaxed and body heavy, but at the same time uplifted. So it really depends on the individual testing of each product. And what I do with that is if I have a patient who comes in and let's say it's one of my chronic pain patients, they have a lot of arthritis, a lot of inflammation, I'll look and I'll say, well, this flower might contain some THC, but it has a lesser cannabinoid in there called CBG. CBG can be very good analgesic. It's also good for inflammation. So I say, well, this flower has about 1.5% of CBG and this flower doesn't. So the first flower might be a good option for you because it has some added benefit, more of what you're trying to focus on. And it's not only just the THC concentration. I've had patients who've had great success with lower THC concentrations, but you're getting the plethora of other cannabinoids and terpenes that might be helpful. So I try to look at the big picture of the flower testing or the vape oil testing to help patients make that determination. Or if patients come in and they tell me that a lot of THC tends to make them more anxious or paranoid, I say, okay, well, let's look at some lower THC. Let's look at maybe a CBD cross. So a 1-to-1 ratio of CBD and THC can be very helpful for that. CBD will help balance out the psychoactivity of the THC. So we kind of do that. I kind of ask patients, well, what are you looking for in what form? And then let's see what our options are. Let's see what the best option we have for you based on the testing.
That's great. Yeah, I guess as far as the testing of the product, that's a lot of information that they're getting from these plants and the extracts. That's got to be a involved process, I assume, to pull that information out and put it on the label. Because I know in Massachusetts, they have that, most of that on the label. Do you have like a more like material that kind of tells, well, this particular flower strain has more of this type of terpene and that kind of thing, even if it's not necessarily written on the packaging?
So in Massachusetts, I get the same information that pretty much everyone else gets.
Patients,
on the label, because not everyone has to test for terpenes. So some
I was going to say, I don't think Massachusetts, you can.
So it really depends on the grower, because some do, some don't.
On the grower.
In Connecticut, they have to. So in Connecticut, they're testing for cannabinoid content and terpenes. So in Connecticut, that's all on the label for the patient, and then it's also on our, the information we get from the growers as well.
Okay.
So it makes it a little bit easier in Connecticut, but in Mass, I can get that information too. Most of the time it might take a little bit more digging, but it really just depends on whether or not the grower is testing for them, because sometimes they don't. But I would say most growers are now, because they're realizing the value of knowing those things and for patient selection of products. So I really haven't come in contact with too many instances where I didn't have that information.
Oh, that's cool. That's good to know. I'm really learning a lot. And I guess kind of what are your overall thoughts about the cannabis market in Massachusetts? I think you've touched on your concerns and joys, but anything else that you have on, and Connecticut? It sounds like there's some differences between Connecticut and Massachusetts. I'm hearing that Connecticut has a little bit more support at the dispensary level.
Because it's differently.
Okay.
It's how it's set up is different, because in Connecticut we only have 4 growers. So 4 growers who make all the products for all the dispensaries. All the dispensaries get the same product. And we have a really great relationship with those 4 growers.
Okay.
They're constantly in contact with us. What are the types of products you need? What are your patients asking for? And I think that it's just been established a little bit longer. I think Massachusetts is different too, because in Massachusetts you have grow right. In Connecticut we don't. So there's a lot of different things going on in Massachusetts, and there's a lot more growers and potential places to buy products from.
Because it's rec now.
It's rec as well. Connecticut doesn't have rec. So that has added a new component in Massachusetts. I think that as it grows in Massachusetts, recreationally and medicinally, I think that bigger market, will help products be developed for what patients are asking for. I think it just needs more communication. And that's why I'm glad of what I'm doing, because for the botanists, we have our own grow facility as well.
Okay.
So I can hear what my patients are saying. I I communicate with my grower and say, hey, are we coming out with any CBD mixes soon? Or what do we have coming down the pipeline? Because this is what I think that people would really benefit from.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's just a little different setup between the different states, but I think that as Massachusetts keeps expanding, I think that it will get to that sort of point. That's my hope anyway.
Yeah, that's hopeful. And I hope Connecticut will come along as the country does. Okay, finally, to wrap it up, if someone's out there listening and they've never used cannabis before, but they're considering it, what would you, recommend, or what tips can you give?
So my first recommendation is talk to your primary care provider, because they do know you the best. They've known you, they know your whole medical history. If they think it's appropriate, or if you have more questions from there, let's say they don't know much about it.
Right. What if they're negative, or they're like...
Yeah, if they're negative, and you want some more information, call the botanist. I'm happy to talk to patients, even if they're not my patients yet, to answer maybe some basic questions, then maybe put you in a direction to tell you maybe where you could go to be certified if it's something that you want to progress with. We could, look up any sort of information sessions that might be in the area. I know for us, because we're in Worcester, Leominster, and Shrewsbury, we mostly concentrate in those areas. But if there's been, let's say, a senior center or a group somewhere in the state that wanted us to come in, we'd be happy to do that.
That's
Give
great.
us a call. My outreach partner, Ross Riley, would be happy to get information. We'd be happy to do that and schedule that for larger groups, too. I mean, anyone who wants to have information, I just don't know where to get it. General information session is the best way. And then besides that, if people have more private questions, whatnot, you can call the botanist. I am there mostly Thursdays, but for the most part, staff can pass along questions to me, and I can also call people from Connecticut. And just know where to ask the questions, and then from there, everything's online as far as how to become a patient and whatnot.
There really is.
There's a lot of information out there.
Yeah, the CBD craze. I didn't even ask you about that. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I should have more of a caution because there's a lot of CBD out there. It's almost like the newest fad.
Right.
You have people making CBD oil, selling them in all kinds of places. I just like to give a caution. A lot of people will like to try it before they become a patient to see, well, is this even going to be helpful for me? Just know where the product is made. Do the research. Is it tested? Where is it being grown? Is it being grown responsibly?
Gotcha.
Are there chemicals in it? What's the dosing? A lot of those products don't have a dosing. They just have a general there's 1,000 milligrams in this bottle. Okay, well, what's the measuring tool? Exactly. So I would just say, just really, really look into a product. If patients need help navigating that, give me a call. I can look into it. And yes, that is something that I think it's it could be beneficial. The CBD can be helpful to a lot of people. I use CBD myself. Though I'm not a patient on the medical marijuana program. I don't use THC, but it can be very helpful for lots of different things. And I know that a lot of times people want it to work so bad, but then you also set yourself back by using something that might not necessarily be the best product.
Yes.
So then people get discouraged. They don't want to try it. And I said, well, let's try this because, it's from the dispensary. We know, what it contains. I went to a conference a couple weeks ago, and one of the talks I listened to was about, they did a study. They took a bunch of CBD products off, gas station shelves, smoke shop shelves. They tested them. Some of them didn't even contain CBD.
Yeah, that's kind of what we're going to try to do. Yeah, really. I'm not surprised.
And, so it's very discouraging for people. So I definitely just, make sure things are tested. Do your research as far as where it's coming from.
Okay.
If there's any other questions, reach out to someone who might be able to answer it, whether it be me or even call a dispensary. And then for information, just, we're happy to be those information providers, and we'd be happy to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, this has been so interesting. I'm glad to know about the services at The Botanist. I've been really impressed with their selection and their customer service, and their actual facility is gorgeous. So
everyone
absolutely.
I work with there is so amazing, and it's definitely been a great adventure starting to help out there and getting to know all my coworkers up there and all the patients that I've met recently as well. It's very positive atmosphere, and that's what we strive to do.
Daniella, I appreciate this.
No,
we'll be in touch.
Thank you so much for having me.